Lloyd's of London has told all shippers that you can take the Trump insurance now if you want. We'll never insure anything you ever do again, ever.
They're already saying that United Kingdom and other parts of the Commonwealth are already in the early parts of civil war. That we haven't seen in 250 years, and that is that the American branch of the English peoples is smacking its parent upside the face.
Friday, the 27th of March, the Hormuz Strait is still closed, messing up oil and supply lines and gas supply lines all over the world. What are the ramifications of this? How bad is it going to get? That's what we're going to talk about in this video. Hey, hey Blaine, thank you so much, guys,
Good to see
for
you
being
all on a
here.
Friday.
And to
Yes,
return?
yes, is back. And so this is our, I do this with you guys once a month, and usually I get my head exploded. And you'll notice I've got a short haircut, so I have less protection from any explosions. So, Blaine, you and I recorded a video the other day where
Yeah,
you talked about incoming famine. I think that was posted today on the channel.
yeah.
So let's start with that because the Hormuz Strait is closed. What are the
Mhm.
ramifications of that? The collateral, the fallout.
So let's start right there. It's financially closed. It's not closed.
Yeah.
There's ransoms being paid, $2 million a ship at last count, that the Iranians with their little toy drones have managed to convince um, nations. I suspect there's some Lloyd's of London stuff in here too, that if they pay the ransom, they can have the insurance wrapper and then they can come on through. It's not in our best interest to see the mullahs get recapitalized even at those levels, which are small. But it portends a much larger game is going on as we look at this regional war between Iran, Israel, the United States as a belligerent. It's much bigger than that, and this is absolutely the folks that EM refers to as the high table. They are in desperate acts right now, and desperate enemies do desperate things, and the knock-on effects from that, which can impinge not just the global oil and energy and gas supplies. The knock-on effects affect the third world, which is in planting season right now, and they need the damn fertilizer, which is sulfur and urea. Wait a minute, because the climate cultists lashed every single diesel engine in the world to this thing called diesel exhaust fluid, which is urea, which makes ammonia. Um, there's this battlefield is not limited to the Straits of Hormuz. It goes from the port of LA all the way around the world to the Malacca Straits, and I see a layered approach by the bad guys to expect that with the United States having its handful right now, there are knock-on effects happening in other parts of the world. Will this explode into a full-blown famine? I think it's possible that it does. I'm not telling you that it's 100% a surety. There are no certainties, only probabilities. And but certainly trucking, transportation, food, all are on my mind, especially as we look at refinery damage here, closures of refineries. California's possibly going down to one refinery. And then we've got, 1 million+ acres of farmland and fire in Nebraska. People, it's a distraction because we're not talking about those things. We're talking about when the hell are the Straits of Hormuz going to be opened? It's a good question, but it's not the only question.
Okay. I want to go back to something you said at the beginning that it's financially closed. So I understand the City of London withdrew their insurance from the shipping, which is the first time they've ever done that. They didn't do that during the Iran-Iraq war, which went on for 8 years. They didn't do that through the uh, other two American wars against Iraq. They just haven't done that before, but this time they're doing it. But then the US came in and said, okay, we'll insure the ships. So how are they still financially closed? The Iran saying you got to pay us $2 million passage, a toll. Well,
Well,
what?
the problem is Lloyd's of London has basically gone and quietly told all shippers that you can take the Trump insurance now if you want. We'll never insure anything you ever do again, ever. And so they're stymied.
Oh, they haven't no one in over 300 years has seen the empire stumble.
Yeah.
They've seen it step back a bit, but they've never seen it stumble. They've never seen the empire brought to its knees. And so while they suspect that that might happen, there's nothing historically reference wise to say it will. Because every time the empire seemed to be brought to its knees over the last century and a half, 2 centuries, it's always stepped back maybe once, but regained its footing, figured out other ways to screw everybody out of everything, and kept moving forward in an ever more insidious way. So, tactical pause that that's the saying we have in our world, right? Everybody needs to take a tactical pause. We are seeing something, quite frankly, that we haven't seen in 250 years, and that is that the American branch of the English peoples is smacking its parent upside the face
That's
and
true.
saying no more. And the world hasn't seen that in 250 years. And in a way, one must wonder if the second shot heard around the world was, the first shot there in Iran, not the 12-day war, but this recent one. And we just don't see it in that context yet, right? Because it's again, the articles I've been writing, pieces I've wrote, um, we are finishing the 400-year English Civil War.
Yeah.
It looks like a world war because we're embedded everywhere, because we are the largest empire the world's ever seen. That empire that is finalizing a civil war. And that civil war is between the sovereigntist and, the financialist, the City of London, the Praetorians, quite literally the Praetorian Guard. So that the world, and I've been doing it my own self because I needed to, but also because I want to, I've been taking a tactical pause. Everything I see, though, tells me, at least now, right, that, and it depends because we're seeing the court, the court, the old term for the court, right? We're seeing the leadership get, have substantive fractures and attacks, and we're dealing with all the legerdemain in the court, including Kent and everything else that's happening, right? And
Right.
this recent release of all of Cash Patel's Gmail account, all of that's all out attack to reduce the efficacy of the American branch of the English peoples in what they're doing. What does that tell me? What it tells me is that the English, the British branch, which is not English, but the British branch on the other side of this civil war is losing and losing badly. And so the rest of the world has to pause and wait because they don't know how that's going to go. And to be quite frank, neither do we. What I can
Uh,
say is that, what's that?
I agree completely with that. We don't
Yeah,
know either.
we don't know yet. Um,
So the City of
one,
London is losing.
yes, but it's not just the City of London. This is the old Praetorian system. It's locust through the City of London, but it's also out of Brussels. It's
Sure,
out of
the
Rome.
international
It's out
bar
of,
banking
yeah,
cartel.
yeah.
They, now, how do you say they're losing? Because they're holding the whole world to ransom.
No, not really. Not really. You know, one of the things we have to realize is, okay, so I want to go back to one piece that before I forget it. Blaine, you mentioned about the DEF requirement for diesel.
Yeah.
Trump just lifted that today.
Oh, well, I was in an airplane an hour ago.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's no
Funny
So,
excuse.
enough.
That's no excuse, Blaine.
yeah,
Damn it. Missed it
yeah,
by this much.
yeah. Smart. Yeah, yeah, get smart. Yeah, no, no, no. So that was lifted today. So point being is this: the the enemy, our enemies, the resentfuls, like I write about in the Eternal War, they do the same playbooks over and over. They're very sophisticated playbooks, and they got 4 or 5 variants of it, but they do the same thing over and over. If I'm right, and we've been preparing for 60 years, maybe over 100, right, going all the way back to Teddy Roosevelt, to finalize this English Civil War, which means finish the American Revolution, then that means that the folks, the American, responsibles, oligarchs, and old families and leaders and their parallels across the Commonwealth really understand the enemy's playbooks very, very, very well and would not have moved such as this, a thing that could possibly have launched World War III, if they had not been already moving on all these other avenues, all these, all seven elements of power simultaneously for years before this happened. And there's another key piece to that. Russia and China know our playbook very well also because we've used it against them for several centuries.
Hmm.
And if ARC is a reality, which I more and more I believe absolutely, then America, Russia, and China are already allies. They're all not allies, but they're already working in concert to address the very concerns such as famine, because that's one of the major plays in all five of the playbooks, the enemy's playbooks. So to think that Russia can't compensate, or that we can't compensate with some modifications with Venezuela's crude and petroleum resources, et cetera, for what's coming out of the Straits of Hormuz. I don't think that's I don't think we would have moved if we didn't know what could have been stopped, what could have been prevented, and what could have been created, famine most of all. I think we already had plans in place for such things as urea and sulfates, et cetera.
One of the interesting things on that, which would really point to you having a lot of validity in what you're saying, is that on the same day, I think it was a day apart actually, Russia and China both announced that that they would cease all fertilizer exports. And moreover, when India, and this was my big tell, when India came hat in hand to China and said, "Hey, look, we got to have fertilizer, and we have contracts with you, and you're telling us you're not going to honor them," and they got a big middle finger from Beijing,
Yes,
and that's
yes,
really a big middle finger right at the UK.
that's exactly right, because India is the largest British outpost
That's right, right.
by far. Yeah.
Okay. I got this other way of looking at it, that this all plays into the hands of the globalists because they get to impose energy lockdowns, they restrict our movement, it promotes 15-minute cities,
Well,
they
hold
tell
up, hold up, hold up. Let's take what you just said. You're correct, Rich, on that being a line of effort that I think they're getting ready to pursue, especially when you look at the IEA lockdown guidance that they sent, between the UK all the way to Japan, and you have countries looking at that. But one thing I would throw into the mix of what you're saying is, before you say the globalists are going to have the upper hand, I think with the Warren populations that are in their spheres of control, that's going to be, if they want to choose to do that, I think that's going to be the snap point.
I think,
I
well,
don't,
yeah, Blaine, I completely agree with you. So we're hearing the little whispers, and not just in my community or in Blaine and I shared community, but we're hearing whispers in broader, academics, et cetera. But they're already saying that United Kingdom and other parts of the Commonwealth are already in the early parts of civil war. Not
yeah.
civil war is pending, but it's already started. So what we need to understand is this: we color revolutions are things that we can bring about almost anywhere, unless there's a strong, capable, domestic peoples who are aware of it, like the Hungarians, like the Croats, like the
we,
Serbs,
we
right?
somebody at the helm who's smart and awake to it, like Putin, like Orban, like Xi,
Correct.
like Lukashenko.
Traore, correct,
Yeah.
correct. So in countries that have a strong people, strong cultural, civilizational peoples that are healthy, they've been preparing for this. They've been dealing with all of this for quite some time, longer than we have. It's very hard. You can hit them, you can strike them, because we can't cover all things at all places at all times. But it's very hard to color revolution and coup and civil war them. We tried that with Russia, with the Chechens
Hmm.
twice, right? We've tried that elsewhere. However, when you're dealing with the United Kingdom and you're dealing with France and possibly Germany, it's not quite there, but it's not far behind. They're Ireland. They are on the very verge of outright hot civil war right now. So, okay, go ahead and play your games, globalist, financialist, Roman Praetorians, play your game, and we will back a civil war in your country, become a revolution.
Okay. Okay. I don't know. I'm just thinking, I don't know what to say, but I don't know. I don't hear anything like that going on. There, I can see it coming, but to me, it seems more like what's more likely is the indigents against the migrants,
Yeah, well,
because
no,
that's
no, no,
what they're
no. Well,
stirring.
that's how it starts. But so again, I would look to the Spanish Civil War, 1936, 1939, and I would look to the 5 to 7 years leading up to it
T Tell us,
as
Ian.
the it was different factions. There was no clear distinctions of, socialist versus fascist or whatever the hell they shaped up to in the end. It was factions. It was factions and regions and a good amount of ethnic stuff as well. And initially, it was a lot of tit for tat, paying people back for grievances. That's usually how these things start. And then they start shaping up and they start shaping up into camps over a couple years. And then eventually you get to what we would classically qualify as a straight up civil war with distinct enemies, distinct force on force, distinct objectives, etc. But these things don't, generally start this way. And you're absolutely right. How this starts is, you know, the forced immigrants, the ones who are unwitting or unwelcome, forced upon us versus the natives. And if the natives prevail in that, then they go after the regime. And they may be doing that right from the beginning as well,
Right.
because in this time with the media and information we have and having had the rape gangs and all these other things and their equivalents in other parts of the world, not just there in the UK,
Mm.
to include here in the United States, right? Um, the real wrath amongst most of the very capable guys, the guys that be the ones advising and assisting, is directed towards the regime. We can deal with the unwelcome immigrants relatively politely or not at all. But our anger is, where we are right now is we are less at civil war and we are way more at revolution, way more at revolution than civil war.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think the way you war game that out, everything you're saying is absolutely correct, but the way it war games out in my own brain is move one on the board. Let's take Ireland as an example. Move one on the board is Taoiseach government plus invaders, the Islamists, all bound together to
Indians,
fight an
yeah,
unruly mob. They'll call it that. And then what happens as they use their own Irish police forces, their own Irish army, those people will turn on the Taoiseach and the government in five
correct,
hot seconds. That's the next move on
correct,
the board is they'll
correct,
unravel and they'll come across to the other side. Now
correct.
you've got your revolution in full
That's
progress.
exactly right. And that's exactly what happened in the early years of the Spanish Civil War. That's
Right.
exactly, yeah, Blaine, you're absolutely right. What happens is the weaker, the um, weaker members of the enforcement entities for government will stay loyal to government, but the
Right.
stronger ones will stay loyal to their people. Once they realize that their payrolls, pensions, and promotions are pretty much gone anyways,
Yeah.
that what they will do is they will, government isn't they don't know if government's going to sustain or not. They also don't know if their family's going to survive if they continue to fight for government.
Yeah.
And what they do is they go back to being loyal to the
Right.
people, to their country, to their culture.
They
Okay.
won't kill their own.
No,
They won't kill their
no,
own.
because their
And
family will get
honestly,
killed in their house.
In Persia, you're going to see the same thing with the breakdown of the IRGC. They won't have effective command and control because at the end of the day, when there's no more life support systems for the IRGC generals and
Correct.
there's no cash to flow, you're just not going to see an Iranian go kill an Iranian.
That's
Okay.
yeah.
Well, except that has happened in countries where, there've been the Peterloo massacre. No, you just got to know when it comes to history, I'm on rather thin, superficial ice, okay? But when instances where the British have army have themselves killed Britons,
Yes. Oh, no, no, no. That's exactly right, though. But that's because the empire, the regime was still strong.
Yeah, that's it.
The regime in the empire is not strong at all. It has nothing left. It's gutted. So when again, it gets exactly what I said. When leaders in enforcement entities believe that their payrolls, promotions, and pensions are safe if they continue to fight for government, they will continue to fight for government. When they believe that that's not maybe true, and or it's not true on a broad enough spectrum that their family's in danger in their own country or their own place, or
Mhm.
themselves in ways that they weren't before, because tiering of enforcement entities, right, all protect one another's backs in different ways, they will turn. Now they won't all turn, but enough of them will turn. People also really need to look at the American Revolutionary War. They have a complete misappropriation about the early years of it. It wasn't big armies on big armies. It
Right.
wasn't, blues on reds. It was American, it was colonials on colonials,
Hmm.
colonial forces on colonial forces as they figured out who was a Tory, right? Whoever remained loyalist, right? A loyalist, and then who was, a revolutionary, an American, whatever. I don't remember the terms exactly, but you know, who was remaining loyal to the crown and what entity, what unit, what law enforcement agency, all of these things, and who was going to be loyal to the possibility of this new country emerging. That's how these things shape up beginning. Well, what is the thought analytics of the people doing that?
Hmm.
Some are going to remain loyal to the regime no matter what because they're loyal.
Right.
Some are going to
okay.
remain loyal to the regime because they know that they've been doing horrible things, and if the regime falls, they're going to probably hang or being drawn and quartered. But a good number of people will realize this thing is over. This is ended. This is coming. This is, me and my family are at too much of a risk if I don't side with the rebels.
Right.
And that's put in, then let's do one other piece. Don't think for a second that America won't send advise and assist guys, right, in to help the rebels.
Oh, no question. No question. That's another big factor that you're getting on is predominantly in America, most of us hail from lineages that harken back to Europe and to the UK and the Isles and Ireland and Scotland. And so when the opportunity is there, you just watch New York and Boston empty out.
Or
And
San Francisco,
oh yeah,
freaking
fat
Idaho
guys with
here.
no
Yeah.
training whatsoever will have their hearts pull them across. And they may be cannon fodder or they may be doing
Well,
dressings on people's wounds, but they'll feel a magnet draw to go be involved. The other thing that I think is important goes back to the Revolutionary War because the maps of the cities, New York, the old Revolutionary War cities, New York, Philadelphia, Boston, the predominant big three, a lot like what you find in European villages still today, because of the taxation laws, you have these very, very dense villages and towns, row housing across the continent with wide fields. There's, good and bad reasons for all of that. But when you look at the terrain of combat, then you get to these people that are in the regime, basically, the constable, the Bobby, the police officer, the army officer who's back. But if they're living in row housing, what happens is the rebels have immediate access to all of the centers of gravity for those folks, and they can flip them in 5 seconds because it's like,
correct.
well, we killed Johnny's family last night. Are you next? Is that what we're going to go do? We'd much rather just go fight the Taoiseach, and that's how that's going to look.
This is what we did for 27 years in Afghanistan, Iraq, Philippines, and elsewhere.
Mhm.
right? We went after key leaders. We didn't fight, except for in the beginnings, not even Afghanistan or Philippines, et cetera. But we didn't fight armies on armies. We went after leadership and their families.
Right.
Wait a second, I didn't publicly say that. We didn't go after their families. I didn't say that.
Right.
Do you want me to cut that out, Ian?
Families are
Do you want
they're
me
off the table.
do you want me to cut that out?
No,
Okay.
because what people need to understand is that when it is one thing when we are going against foreigners overseas, it is a whole different thing when a people go to blood against themselves. There are no restraints.
Right.
There are
That's
none
exactly
because
right.
it's a winner take all.
Okay. A
Now
couple of
now
things.
take the food out of the equation and see how it goes.
Okay, couple of things to add to that, right? So one, this
Yeah.
notion that they're going to make agreements within Europe that they will send German police to deal with Spanish. They'll send Spanish
Correct.
police to deal with the Irish. They'll send Irish police to deal with the French and the French police to deal with the British. Except if the governments have got no money, that ain't gonna, they've got no money
Well,
to
they'll
pay these
they'll
new
fake
arrivals.
print. They'll fake print,
But
right?
that,
But I know a whole bunch of Green Berets in particular who are native Spanish speaking guys. They'd
Yeah.
go be advisors and they go to advise and assist in Spain in a heartbeat.
Right.
And I know guys that we worked with down in South and the seventh group guys down in South and Central America, and there's guys from down there, Argentina, freaking Paraguay, Chile. They'd go fight in Spain.
okay,
And here's why this might actually happen. It's the ignorance of the bad guys. It's the ignorance of the enemies. They don't know anything about this stuff. They
Yes,
don't
yes.
understand. They lack the facilities to war game this accurately and appropriately. They're running on some computer model that told them all will be well because they love to be told all will be well. And unfortunately, what they don't understand is that free thinking, innovative folks whose heart are in this and they view it as anytime you view a threat to your culture, there is very little you won't do to get into the cause if you've got your head on straight. Because if let's say you're in one of those little villages, do you really want to be the guy who locked yourself into the row house and never helped and never did anything and never offered any food and never offered any assistance? Because on the other side of that, as we found out in the American Revolutionary War, you don't do so well.
Or if
no,
you fled and you left because there was a
Yeah,
conflict, good luck coming back,
you won't own that house anymore.
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
okay. Now
mhm.
I can get how Muslims went from one country to another to fight with Muslims against some imperial oppression. That's happened recently, right? But then these are people who are from those. There's the whole notion of the Islamic Ummah that all Muslims are one. I'm going to question, not because I think it's not accurate, but so I can understand it better. The notion, I mean, Ian, you're fabulous, but maybe you've been captivated by this romantic notion of a connection between the American English and the English that for most American English isn't there because that they've been in the US for several generations.
Okay, well, let's just take the English out of it. Have you been here in America and talked to the Irish that have
No,
been here for six generations?
no, I've been
They
to
are,
America. I've been to America
uh,
to talk to my cousins who
all
moved
right.
there.
So I mean, this is also why I keep talking about the English civilization, which includes the Scots, the Welsh, the Irish, etc. We are one civilizational peoples. Well, guess what? The Latin Americans are also a civilizational peoples. And guess what civilization that is? Spain. Look what they're doing to Spain. That's not being done incidentally or accidentally. The leftist government going against the monarchy, going against the people, etc. That's being done because the financialists, the Praetorians know that if the right call went up from the king of Spain, hundreds of thousands of fighting age men from South and Central America and right here in the United States would flood into Spain to fight.
Right.
And I
The
think
same
you
in England, the same in Scotland. And I'm going to be torn there because who do I fight for? My mother's people or my father's people, right? But I think Blaine or somebody else said this here recently. Somebody said it the other day. It popped up on Twitter and it's absolutely right. What people don't understand is we like to fight. And when I say fight, I don't mean fist fight. I mean, like, we like to kill people. Now, we like to kill bad people and not good people. Now, we got some people like to just kill people. But point being is this: we
There are
like
some
a,
people that need some killing. Let's be
we,
honest.
right? And this is a thing that's been true since the beginning of time. And because all we hear is the wokest, estrogenic media and academia, fail to realize there's still a huge number, millions upon millions upon millions of red-blooded males in this country alone. You take South and Central America in accord also, which didn't go for all this woke shit. And you've got tens of millions of English speaking and Spanish speaking peoples who could
Yeah.
go back and would willingly, easily, again, with the right inducements, and go fight for the English speaking peoples or fight for the Spanish speaking peoples.
One of the things I would interject here, Rich, is a little bit about American culture. Yes, we are a melting pot. We have a problem in recent years of no assimilation for some of the newcomers, which is actually they're just delaying the inevitable. America will assimilate you. We have the systems to make that happen. But
Or we'll end you. Yeah.
what I would say is that even though families names that are hailing Irish, German, English, Spanish come from the old country, you can go three, four, five, six, seven generations down, and although they're as American as apple pie, they still have a heartfelt, familial, nostalgic bond. You'll see Americans stand up on Italian Day, and I'm an Italian American. And there's this linkage, and it's funny because when they go on tour, like tourists back to the old country, the Italians are like, "What the hell's your problem? Where's all this little fanboy stuff coming from? It's just Italy, dude." But there's this nostalgic love for their own families and how they came across the water to be a part of America, and those links actually they hold down through the lines. And so what you'll find is for folks that are not, hey, sound of gunfire, it's in Europe, I'm heading out, I'm going to back up the Irish. But don't discount also that there's a lot of old men in Boston and New York who are Irish that won't be going over, but they'll be writing checks.
They did
They'll
that
be
for
writing all kinds of checks. They'll be chartering
Uh,
boats.
they
They'll be
did that
paying
for
for
yeah.
airplanes. They'll
They'll be
be,
shuttling weapons. There'll
oh,
be
they did that for
absolutely.
the
explosives.
IRA.
It's exactly right. So, to this conversation, again, we don't need armies.
Right.
You only need some very capable guys to advise and assist the local populace. And then all you need is direct or indirect support of a nation state on arms, weapons, munitions, medical, all of that, all of the logistical stuff. That's all you need. And
Yep.
then you go and you rally the local peoples.
Yeah, and something like 3% of the population is all it
One to
takes
three. Yeah.
yet
Yeah.
to overturn a government.
Yes.
Okay, well that's
And by the by, it doesn't matter how many foreigners they flooded in. And this is their misapprobation on their part, because most of those foreigners, when blood starts flowing, will flee. They fled where they came from. And they
Right.
only fled where they came from because there was foreign powers paying money for them to do so.
Right.
They will flee.
Yep.
And the ones that stand, they'll get mowed down without any remorse whatsoever.
We're going to see that here. We're going to see that in
I think
Minnesota, I
that's,
believe. I would predict you're going to see a reverse migration back to Somalia, because it's the only safe space a lot of these folks are going to end up finding
well, and
when
again,
snap
what
comes.
happens? Some state powers,
Yep.
probably some of the Islamic world and some others are going to do, love life flights or whatever,
Yep.
boats out, etc., and they're going to go get these people and pull them out.
okay.
Yeah.
Why won't they stay and fight? This is their new land.
They didn't
They
fight where they came from. Why the hell would
That's
they
right.
fight where they're at now?
Yeah. They're
All
backed
right,
up by lawfare,
Ian,
man,
Ian, if you're
and
going to be
bribes.
so clever and use common sense in that way,
Well, I mean, it's
Yeah, no,
of
that's
course they're riddled through with a small fraction, not an inconsequential fraction of real fighters. We'll
Hmm.
deal with them, and they'll try to marshal some of the guys, et cetera. But we've been fighting these guys for like 30 years now. We know how they fight. We know how bad they fight.
a- and
Except for the
also the
Chechnyans, by the way. I want to be very respectful. I don't think we're going to be fighting Chechnyans, but the Chechnyans know how to fight, and there's some Arabs know how to fight too, but they fight a different kind of fight, and it's not up there
That's
in the
another
cold,
fight that's
wet.
coming soon to a theater near you, the
but also
Chechens versus the Azovs.
Ooh,
That's
but
going
hold
to
on.
happen here in this country.
yeah,
Before we go there, staying with Europe and Britain and Ireland, the other thing is that the migrants, there's no cohesiveness between them.
no,
So there is, say,
no,
with the English, and the
no,
English can ally with the Scottish and the Irish and the
because we
Welsh,
have
and
numerous
they
times.
could they
So
could
yeah,
even
yeah,
at some level ally with the settled immigrants. That could happen,
maybe,
right? Maybe. But
maybe
the new arrivals, where you've got Indians with Afghanis, with Ukrainians, with
Africans, yeah,
Congolese and
yeah, yeah,
Rwandans and
yeah. Yeah.
Algerians,
Again,
there's
they were
nothing to
brought
unite
in.
them.
Most of these were brought in to be body bags.
Yeah,
Straight up, they were brought in to be body bags so that we, the killers, would get tired and disgusted at some point of the killing.
yeah.
The problem is that the folks who are behind all this, the financialists, have no loyalty to any civilization or country. Their loyalty is to money, to wealth, period.
And their families. That's
And
it.
so, well, and mostly the family, although they'll devour their own families all the time. The issue is that they have zero comprehension of how, if somebody like me was to walk into a pub in Manchester with a bunch of boys and say, boys, we got to go do this thing. And there was a relationship built and trust there, and there had been some other conversations. How many of those boys would leave that pub, go pick up the weapons out of the back of the truck, and go do the thing that needs to be done
Yeah,
to save our civilization?
They would.
Not somebody's freaking money, not somebody's wealth portfolio in the Bahamas, right? Not some immigrant's right to be there or some trans person's right to whatever.
right.
See, down underneath, the Irish, the Scots, and the English and the Welsh specifically are pub brawlers. It's in our blood. It's why we were able to build the largest empire the world has ever seen and hold it for over a couple centuries through everything that's been thrown at us. Why? Because down underneath, we are pub brawlers. And what do we normally get into a pub brawl over? Somebody disrespected the queen, or somebody disrespected this, somebody disrespected that. And now we're gonna punch it out. We've done that right here in America. Not so much about the queen. Sometimes, depending on where you are, right? But
Yeah.
when let's just look at the Russians. How did the Russians survive everything that was thrown at them in the last years of the Soviet Empire and the decade after? You go into any bar in Russia, any club in Russia, and speak anti-Russian or try to overthrow the Russian government or disrespect Russian civilization.
It's
Those
a
boys
bad
will kill
day.
you. They will
Yeah.
kill you.
Hmm.
They will take you outside and they will beat you to death.
Hmm.
Well, don't think the English aren't still the same. And even us over here and in Canada and Australia and New Zealand and South Africa, etc.
I think
Okay.
that's the thing. I think they're banking on the feminization of the masculine in Europe. I think they're banking on that they have taken the fight out of them. The problem is
Correct.
what they don't, where their assumptions go wrong is that those are just dormant monsters inside of those men. And when
Correct.
you can't feed your kid, or you see your kid get raped, or the final snap happens, I mean, it's just like it was in 1775 in America with Sam Adams. We will plan your death in a bar, and we will get all the men in the bar, and we will get our courage together as brothers. We'll get liquored, and God help you. Let's go down to the docks and go destroy a bunch of tea.
What
And
is
it'll
Starmer
start
going
there.
after in the UK? Pubs.
Yep, that's right. Oh, yeah.
What was Blair going after even in his time?
Hmm.
Pub culture, pub
That's right.
community,
Yeah,
pub
That's
life.
right.
Starmer's doing that.
Yeah,
attacking a
well, it's
pulp
exactly. But it
culture.
was
Yeah.
happening under Blair as well,
Yeah.
right? Why? Well, here in the United States, we branched an entire we birthed an entire new branch of the military at a
Yeah,
tavern called Ton.
yeah.
The
Marines are
U.S.
born in a
Marine Corps
bar.
was born in Ton Tavern.
Yeah.
Bunch
The
of boys
country was
got
born in
drunk
a
and
bar.
said, "Screw this. We're going to make
That's
the Navy drive us around the world so we can go kill people."
yeah, that's right. That's right. The whole country was born in a bar. Sam Adams started the insurgency group called the Sons of Liberty, and he had a beautiful, very, very elegant communication system so that if one node was discovered, the other nodes would not be found out. He eventually was operating under the pseudonym and writing under that pseudonym, Sam the Publican. And and our nation was born in a bar. The strategies for the United States were born in bars, liquored, hard liquored.
So here, I wrote about this some couple years ago, but every decision that has ever been made, any momentous decision that's ever been made in history was made by people who were at least buzzed, if not outright drunk.
Right. That's it. That's it. That's it.
And that's not hyperbole or exaggeration. I
No,
mean,
it's
it's
just the
like
truth.
that's
It is ab
historical truth. All of the most impactful decisions in human history were made by people who were at least buzzed, if not just smashed drunk.
I mean
And
the
then not
tales.
just the decision, then they went and did it at least
Yeah.
buzzed, if not drunk.
No one was sober on the decks of that ship when they dumped the tea. No one.
Do you
Wait,
know?
I can see
Well,
I
by the
can see
way,
the
the crew on the boat, the
yeah.
crew on the boats have
Yeah, they're
rum.
liquored. They're
They're
liquored too.
liquored up too.
So so I can see the conversation in the tavern, which is wait a minute, I got it. Hear me out. We're all gonna go get dressed up like Indians, and we're gonna put some black tar on our face, and we're going out to that ship out there, and we're dumping all the shit off the ship, and and then I
And
can
we're
see
gonna
all the
howl
liquor
like
guys
Indians.
going, "Oh,
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah.
exactly what we're gonna do. Oh, hell yeah,
Yeah.
I'm in. I'm all over that."
And
And
four
any
pints later for everybody,
right. And the soy boy,
and it's a
maybe two of
go.
them, maybe the
Yeah,
two soy boys in the tavern were like, I don't think that's a good idea. They yanked their asses out and put
correct.
Indian feathers on them in 5 seconds and
Correct.
say,
And
you're
drug
doing
them
it or you're drowning
along
tonight.
so they couldn't talk.
That's right. That's right. You're in. We're all in. Everybody's getting a piece of this.
Oh, yeah, Blaine, you guys are fabulous. Just providing the little bits that were missed out in my history books at school. These little
It's
crucial details. I want to go back to something that you said because I want to understand it better. That you're saying that we're close to revolution, close to civil war.
I believe it's already begun.
What are the
Yeah.
signs? How can you tell? And I'm assuming that both of you have got some experience and knowledge and insight into how a population moves into this direction from your experience in the military, perhaps, and what you've studied.
I think we start with Blaine's article of yesterday, which is his best piece yet. Of
I appreciate
several
that.
good ones, but this was the best one yet.
I was in the Houston airport and I knew it was going to be a shit show. A mile plus line, three-quarters of the security screening workforce had walked off the job. They were getting supplemented by some ICE officers. And if this had been a year before COVID or right after COVID, you would have seen Americans are just they're happy to get pissed off. They have no trouble getting red-faced and telling you how pissed off they truly are. And normally in normal times, it does not take much of an infraction or an imposition to get an American right off the stands and red-faced. Here's the chilling thing. This used to be the same way it was with my flying squadron. It wasn't when they were bitching, which was all the time, that I was upset or I was worried. It was when they'd go quiet. It was when this calmed in, this
Yes.
resignation,
Yes.
this withdrawal,
Yes.
and to a person, this mile-long line of people shoved into the bowels, wherever the line could be crammed inside the Houston airport so everybody could wait to get through the security turnstile, which would take 4.5 hours.
Jeez.
And that was at the start of the day. It got worse throughout the day. They weren't angry. They weren't speaking angrily across each other. They were resigned. And I saw a little micro version of this in Kyrgyzstan in Central Asia right before the country blew up in our hands. And it was the Kyrgyz people. They went from protests to dead stop quiet. And then they snapped. And when they snapped, it was vicious. It was nobody taught these people professional violence. This was I wouldn't wish this on any enemy.
Yes.
And so what I starting to see happen across the United States is this disassociation of the ability to bring grievances and get redress from your government. It's disappeared. The illusion that you have representation in your government, local, state, or federal level, it's vanishing. And when they see the insults of the transportation system being defunded so somebody can make a political point in DC, um, they snap
Okay.
to that place, that very bad, dark place.
So, Blaine, very much in support of what you're saying. I worked bars and nightclubs when I was younger, when I was a
Mhm.
lot bigger guy, as a head of security and a security guy. And in a real fight, you know shit's about to happen when one of the parties in the fight, one of the guys in the part stops talking
Yep.
and he almost stops moving. And what is he doing? He's priming his body, he's
Hmm.
preparing, and he's waiting for the right thing to be said or the right motion, and then he moves and shits on at that point. And it
Hmm.
happens every single time. So when a people go quiet, when a strong, capable people, forget all the estrogenics, but when strong, healthy, capable people go quiet, they are getting prepared for sudden action. And all it takes is the right spark. And we don't know. We can't know what that spark's going to be. But the tinder has been set. The
Yep.
fuel has already been poured on for 40 years. All
Right.
it takes is the right spark. And I'm seeing it. I can feel it in my own self. I've backed away from social media. I've backed away from shows. I can just sense it. And any of the guys that I've done action with or have been in sister units, et cetera, they all are in the same place. They're all quiet. They're all not talking as much. They're not on social media as much. They're not buying into the narrative and participating in the narrative as much. They're just preparing. They're just in that momentary pause where something's going to go off here soon. Now, does it get delayed a little bit? Who knows? Because the enemy has a say, right? The regime is very good at manipulation and control, but the regime has lost power. I don't hear people, you know, the thing that I hear most now is, what are we going to do? Vote harder?
Right.
If we just vote harder, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. When you take away every single tool, peaceful tool, process tool out of the people's hands, and you show that you're doing that to them all the time, and you rub their faces in it.
Yes, yes, yes.
You didn't pay your property taxes one year. I'm taking your entire property. I'm taking it all. You missed one invoice here. We're evicting you out of your business completely. It's these types of things, and then no redress. Well, I've got rights. Well, the hell you do. You've got a barrage of attorneys you're going to face, and we're just not going to acknowledge your existence. So when the people get to the place of hopelessness, meaning that it's very clear what the population wants out of DC right now on these contentious issues. They want a free and fair voting system that only Americans can vote in. That's one. They want immigration law enforced. They want these people who shouldn't be here deported, and they want people held accountable. And you have a DC that's trying to be fancy with this and is willing to let basic systems fall apart and destroy themselves. And it sounds trivial to DC because they breathe the rarefied air and they're completely out of touch with the people. But but if you think about it, think about a welder. who saved for that one vacation in 10 years for him and his wife, saved his ass off, and now he's taking his wife to the Caribbean because he wanted to. And they show up and they miscalculated what that new line to get through screening was going to be like. And he could only afford the non-refundable tickets, and that's it. The whole vacation's done. He gets no money back, and that's done. And no one cares. No one cares. And there's no one to complain to. And there's no one to say, I want my money back or I want you to fix this and make it right. And it could be your kid's wedding. It could be your grandmother's funeral. There's a million reasons to go get into a little tube of pain and go fly somewhere. But the problem
Well,
is nobody in the swamp on either side of the aisle gives a rat's ass about that. And they know it now. They know this now.
Okay. Let me say stuff that complements what you've just said, Blaine, but bring it to Britain in terms of people getting pissed off with what this government is doing. So I think you both know that they are looking to eliminate jury trials
Right.
for
yeah,
people for uh, convictions that carry less than 3 years
That's a
sentence.
snap point. That's a snapping point,
well,
I
That's
think.
one. Then also the in the last week the government decriminalized, or the week before, decriminalized full-term abortion.
yeah.
Something that only, apparently, according to polls, only 1% of people support, because the other 99% regard it as infanticide. Then there's the Ed Miliband, who's the energy minister. There was a vote in Parliament, and he advocated for the winning vote, which is that Britain is not going to open up this gas field that it has in the North Sea, that in a matter of months could be supplying gas to all of Britain. All the homes would have enough gas. No, 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 no. We're going to carry on with net zero in order to save the planet.
Right.
Now, as a minister in Parliament, he gets his energy bills paid by the by out of the tax purse. Then in April, there's going to be a budget, and I suspect what this government are going to do is they're going to raise the duty on fuel so that petrol is going to cost even more. So I think people are going to see that they're doing all this. Oh, and then there's what happened with I forget his name. I think it's Josh Sweeney. If in the comments, if you let me know, but he's the advisor, McSweeney, advisor to Keir Starmer, and it's connected to Mandelson, and McSweeney has just lost his phone, which had all these text messages and WhatsApp messages or whatever regards with Starmer and Mandelson about his appointment, and he just lost his phone, and he didn't. It was a government phone, high security. He didn't report it to the police. The police didn't investigate. Oh, we've just lost those text messages. I can't produce them. That's
Well,
it.
what did Hillary Clinton do here with
Oh, with
30,000 emails and the bit bleaching and the hammers to the hard
yeah.
drives and the right?
So
So,
this is the equivalent, but now what we have is a lot of other stuff happening. And the Co-op, which is a supermarket chain in the UK, have said that to their staff that if you try and stop shoplifters, you will be sacked. So
yeah, same in
just go.
California.
Oh, so go to the Co-op and fill your bags up and walk out without paying. No
Yeah,
one's going to
so
stop you. That's not
give
an
me one.
inducement, by the way, for people to do that, but
Yeah,
some
yeah,
people
yeah,
will.
yeah. Um,
Sorry, Ib,
let's be,
but
yeah, go
all of
ahead.
that, it will piss people off.
Yeah, well, they're already there. People are already beyond pissed, right? But again, this is why I think they're running Rupert Lowe in this whatever reform or whatever party
Restore Britain.
restore is I think that they're doing that as a smokescreen to give the people the belief that voting still works, that liberal democracy is still actually a thing. Liberal democracy died 40 years ago, maybe 60 years ago. It's done. It's over. It's been demonstrated and proven for exactly what it is. It's a tax, wage, and debt slavery system.
Right.
an unaccountable tax, wage, and debt slavery system. So it's done and it's over. People just don't know what comes next. They don't know what to replace it with. So they're just standing by. Let's be honest, throughout all human history, in every culture and society that's ever been, the revolution starts amongst the oligarchs when they realize that the old system is dead, it's not redeemable, that the people will no longer back and support it, and that some other factions in the oligarchy, the princes, are using the vestiges of the old system to destroy them. And so they move to change the system, to revolution the system. But it's always the lower upper class and the upper class who the ones who initiate the Civil War revolution,
Mhm.
always. And then that cascades down, and that brings the leadership capability guys, the actual fighters, the truly strategic thinkers, and the fighters, the guys that really know how to do this shit, know how to train locals real quick and take them through confidence targets real quick, and then really start impacting the battlefield.
Okay, but is that happening amongst the oligarch
I don't know, but
class?
the more I look at the Iran stuff, the more I look at the counters, the more I look at what's happening here to try and tear our leadership apart. That what's happening, Joe Kent, who I have immense respect for. Um, Joe Kent is a symptom of a thing, and is a symptom of a thing that the oligarchs here are at the you pare away the outer group of oligarchs, the larger ones, and you get down to the smaller as you go through these conflict years, right? This shadow oligarch war, and you get closer and closer to a small handful, a small group of oligarchs who are, and they're capable assholes, really. And then good, leaders on the other side and assholes on one side. But you get down to this smaller and smaller group with real power, real leverage, real power. And then that starts to fracture because they really aren't on one another's side. Some are only aligning with one another to take other factions or other elements out and take them down. But ultimately, you get down to a very small handful of people and they can't hold. And then they go to war with one another. And that's when the revolution or civil war starts. When one or more member of that, high level oligarchic member or faction of oligarchs, and that doesn't have to necessarily be in the country, it's in the world, right? When they realize that they're losing power, they go. So what happened? My suspicion, if the financialists, the globalists, whatever people want to call them, it's really the Praetorians, if they effectively fight on all these dimensions to, you know, start turning the tide against us in Iran or related to Iran or spread that out from there, don't think for a second that some of our oligarchs won't send, people to advise and assist a revolution in the UK and in Spain and in France and in Germany. Don't think that that's not a weapon that isn't on the table that the US can't and won't use.
Very true. It's very true. And we're watching this is how you know you're getting close to what I would call the new phase, not the end phase, but the new
Yeah,
phase of the
the
war.
next phase. Yeah.
The next phase is Joe, and I think Joe Kent really did an amazing job of what I would call grabbing the emergency brake and pulling it as hard as he could, knowing he did not have direct access to the president, trying to get the president's attention to have him see that in this Game of Thrones environment, not everybody's with you. In fact, a lot of them are not. And I think the message transmitted, um, President Trump keeps his own counsel, and that's probably a very good thing. But the I could tell by the way the president went down on him that it was he was very light touch.
Yeah.
Usually if you leave the president's team and you don't have permission to do so, he will excoriate you publicly. And that is the big tell for me is he just called Joe weak and moved on. And that was the end of it. He didn't stay to antagonize him. He didn't keep after him. But I think it did create a spark where the president is looking internally at what's going on and then what is filtering information from getting to him. And if you look at what we are seeing with just energy policy in this country, he's being filtered. I don't think the president has a decent appreciation for what's going on in California right now with the refineries. Um, he's one guy. He's the CEO of the biggest thing going in the world. So, but what Joe did was expose there is a Game of Thrones contest here, and he is fallen on his own sword to make sure that people, at least the president, has an opportunity to understand that folks that he may trust may not be worthy of that may not be worthy of that trust.
So I think that's absolutely true. I think there's a second front in what Joe did. The second front was to let power, real power, the president and others know where the special operations and intelligence community fall, and what are they willing to go do what we are capable to do? What are the things that we are willing to do that for, and what are the things we are not willing to do that for? Right?
Right.
And maybe that's not so terribly clear, but there is a selection thing going on amongst the special operations and intel community writ large, and it's falling down around specifically Joe Kent and his statements. And what
Mhm.
is that? That is it is a message to the president of the United States and to those who are trying to machinate the president of the United States into doing what they want, that you do not actually have the special operations and intelligence community behind you.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a
We
very good
don't,
point. Yeah.
you do not, you think you're going to use us to go do these things? You
Hmm.
do not have us. Now, the president has us, but only under these conditions. So, me personally, I think that was more of what the intent of Joe Kent was, specifically for what I was saying earlier, because the next phase of this, we're fighting out this English Civil War, is revolution breaks out. And for
Yeah.
revolution to break out, you need the special operations and the intel guys as people who are out advising and assisting against the enemy in their own countries, in their own lands, in their own companies, in their own operations, everything that we do. And the people around Trump that have been machinating, have been able to send our community off to do their bad, their dirty work, their bag work for the last 30 years, don't realize how turned against them the GWAT era guys are, and a lot of the Vietnam, and
Yeah.
post-Vietnam era guys are. We do
Yeah.
not want a war with Iran. We do not want a war with the world. We do not want a Middle East war. And if we have to go revolution our own country, and we have to go revolution, sister countries or our parent countries, we'll do that. But most of us have kids that are fighting age now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we want our grandkids, and do we want them to go die in a slaughter that is useless and has no meaning whatsoever to any of us? And
Okay.
we're not foolish enough now to think that, the medals and the badges and, the honor of battle and
Yeah.
glory, because we
You've
did
lied
that
to
for
us too
you
many times.
motherfuckers for 30 years.
Too many lies. Too many lies, marination in lies. And the thing is they don't have any more narratives to offer. There's no
Well, and they
more
destroyed our country.
rationalizations. Yeah.
Yeah, and they destroyed our country while we were gone. They just
Yeah.
went after our kids while we were gone. They went after our families. They destroyed our country. They flooded all of our enemies and all kinds of people who aren't our enemies but shouldn't be here in our countries while we were off doing their dirty work.
Yeah.
If they try to say, and so this is one of the things that's coming clear, and you can see how strong it is because you can see the vitriol from guys like this Greg Kelly or whatever his name is, and these
Mhm.
others, is the message is being heard. You try to take us to war overseas, and we're going to revolution your ass right here in this country.
There's
And it,
17
Mhm.
million vets hailing from World War II, the last five, six guys, to today. And most of those vets have been involved in uh, just bullshit wars
Bullshit
where
wars.
we're sent off to do the king's bidding, to and no concept of end states, no concept of what is victory like, what are we fighting for. Um,
And then you're
and
transing our kids and generally
yeah,
mutilating them and
yeah.
flooding our communities with gangs so that they're showing up my teen daughter's fucking
Well,
parties.
in real time, what did they do during the Biden administration? They went into the DODS system, overseas schools where we train our kids, and they put that trans bullshit, and they co-opted their education while you're serving abroad.
Correct. Correct.
That's sick.
While I'm off fighting what I think is evil is being embedded right home, and now we are having to deal with the detritus of it in the form of of our broken teens and young 20-year-old and younger kids.
Yeah,
You think we're gonna go fucking fight for you in Iran?
yeah.
You think we're gonna fight for fucking BlackRock's, investment in Ukraine? We are
That
again. This
and,
gets to and by the way, this true also in the United Kingdom. You have to remember, the United Kingdom, NATO sent forces to all these wars. Also,
right.
I know SAS guys
Yep.
and SASR guys and et cetera, and paras and et cetera. They're all in the same place. Not all, I shouldn't say that because we got idiots in our own freaking units, et cetera, or guys who just don't get it because they're still true believers. And I don't mean that in a pejorative, right? They're still loyal, and I respect that to a certain degree. But for the most part, you can listen there in UK to Ant Middleton. That's
Hmm.
his name, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not, I think he's a little over the top with the tough guy stuff, but hopefully he's got the full spectrum DMEFL knowledge and experience as well, or advisors around him. But I like what he's saying, right? He's speaking for the community. And I know guys in Australia, and I know guys in, well, actually I didn't serve with any guys from New Zealand, but I have served with Canadians as well. There's a huge, in the English speaking world, there is a huge special operations and intelligence community amongst all
So
of us.
so they've, I guess what I where I was going with the 17 million is they've created a monster that is going to be very unwieldy for them to deal with, because by and large, the cooked intel community, the deep state part of the intel community, who has helped aid and abet all their stupid narratives to go to these worthless wars, they got nothing. They got nothing. You want to be the deep stater in cubicle 55 at the NSA? Fine, you got some fancy tools on your desk. But at the end of the day, that's not really going to help you out once this sleeping giant, which is not so sleepy anymore, really stirs.
All it
And they're
takes,
getting
yeah.
there. I talked to them across the nation, and they're getting there.
I think that it's not that so Blaine, and forgive me, I don't mean to disagree,
No,
but it's not that they're getting there. They're already there.
yeah,
Everybody I've known, we've been there for 20 years. The
yeah.
issue is that the right command and control signal hasn't gone out yet. Probably how it comes out is different PMCs emerge, and those different PMCs are backed by different funding lines, and
Yep,
those PMCs are sent into different parts of the world to train,
yep,
to recruit, advise, train, or assess, train, and then activate and utilize. The point being is this: the financialists keep pushing. We will revolution their countries.
yep.
And if they're going to push here, they've already, trying to break the blue states from the red states and all that other kind of stuff here. That's okay. We'll kill them here too.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you said all this as a reaction to prolonged war or going to another country to fight a war. Do you really, and I think you're talking about Iran, right? Do you really think that Trump is going to have troops in there?
It's not so
I
much,
don't.
okay, so it's not so much that. It's not, maybe we don't know how, so again, I do believe very fundamentally that Joe Kent said what he said because President Trump is under duress.
Yeah.
He is operating, functioning under duress, just like the King of England. People had got to understand how dangerous the world really is. How many
What?
world
Yeah.
leaders get assassinated? How many of our own presidents have been assassinated?
Yeah.
To
What the
think
stakes
that
are.
right, to think that that somehow the world's key, the key leaders in the world are not in mortal threat every freaking minute, that their families and kids are not in mortal threat every minute, is a ludicrous thought process. They are. And those threats are very real and they're very imminent,
Yeah. Yep.
right? And
Yep.
so there are times when world leaders, actually most of the time, when key leaders are dealing with an in-house security threat. And it's not so obvious as, it is done the way, somebody said, I think it was you, Blaine, or Tom said, the sign of a good intelligence operation, a good, um, Praetorian Guard threat operation is confusion.
Hmm.
But don't think for a second that world leaders are acting as these godlike figures without this unbelievable mortal threat or destructive threat around them from all kinds of factions and all kinds of directions, internally and externally, every minute of the day.
Hmm.
They don't have godlike powers. They don't
No.
have godlike protective powers.
No. If
And
you
when we're
think,
locked in a 400-year civil war that wears the face, was it Skinwalker? Wears the face of a world war as a skin. You're going to have a lot of threat in there to the leaders. You're going to have factions that are that are forcing them to do things that they don't want to do, and
I,
they're
I,
navigating it the best that they can.
I think where President Trump has a strength in this is that what I can see is he respects the assets that the British Empire has built up over
Yes,
centuries.
yes.
He has a healthy respect for what happened to Kennedy in 1963. He has
Reagan,
studied history and he has zeroed in on Andrew Jackson's experience. And so when we look at that, you have to appreciate whether and you'll see wonky, crazy things happen out of his press conferences, things that don't make quite a lot of sense. And Rich, I've told you this before. There's a retail version that fits into the little boxes that mainstream media is putting out. If you want to just chew bubblegum and watch the mainstream news, you're going to be led to believe that we have a war, Iran and Israel. We're on the side of Israel, and it's a war, and we're going to deal with this war. And there's some factors in the war, but that's retail bullshit because
yeah.
President Trump is threading the most dangerous needle almost ever because he's dealing with the assets of the British Empire. And by the way, that's on both sides of the damn straits.
Correct.
And so as he takes this on, you'll see, well, President Trump did something that he's not agreeing with Bibi Netanyahu. It's like, well, yeah, I get that. But what all you're getting is a tiny, tiny little peek into the stakes, the pressure, the tension in all these capitals, because one miscalculation and you don't have a President Trump. One miscalculation, and
Well, it's not
then
just
this
Trump.
determined enemy will get on it.
It's not just Trump that's under duress, it's the
Right.
American people. Because just as
Exactly.
we will flood into these countries and mount revolutions in their
Agree.
countries, they're already primed here to do the same.
Yep.
So it's not always necessarily a mortal duress threat to the president and his family. There could be, and I guarantee you there are,
Yeah.
mortal direct duress threats to the American people.
Yeah.
And so, how do you unwind this regime, this system, this insidious slaver system that's 400 years old, without pushing the enemy to such a place that they revolution you and your country? And then it gets to a certain point of, well, revolution's coming, so who's going to do it to who first,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
right? That's what
Well,
I'm seeking more and more. And I've started to write the second novel. So people can read
mhm,
As Burns, and the last few chapters actually kind of touches on this. I wrote the first chapter for As England Burns yesterday.
mhm.
I'm going to start writing that out as I'm thinking through the process. But really, at this point, I'm more and more, and it's also why I'm getting quieter and I'm just backing away from things. It's just who's going to revolution who first. Now you got to take certain external threats off the table, which is happening. We did in Venezuela. Now we're doing in Iran and the region. You're going to have to deal with Turkey somehow,
Yeah.
right? But ultimately, when this gets to it, it's really going to be is the city of London and their European masters going to revolution the United States before we revolution them? Because
I
we're not going
think
to use army on army kind of forces. Because one,
no,
you all don't have them.
right.
We don't have an army, and we
I think you're
certainly
going to see
certainly don't
Europe
have
go
all these
first. Yeah.
vets.
Yeah. I think Europe is really where the stage is set, where we're going to see the first real pop-offs. And I just don't think we're immune to it here in the United States at
No,
all,
we're not.
especially with what I
No.
see.
No,
Uh,
we are back to a civilizational fight. And Europe is one civilization. The English speaking people are another civilization. America is the greatest part, the strongest member of the English speaking peoples. But when revolution comes, it's going to be two different revolutions. One's going to be on the continent of Europe, the continental Europeans, and the other's going to be in the English speaking peoples.
yeah.
Okay.
And there's factions, right? So there's factional forces prepared, etc. Now, there's one difference today than in any time in history. In any time in history, I would say any time in the last 300 years, modern history, we have a strong Russia and a strong China,
Hmm.
Right.
and they are both world players, right? Neither Russia was a bit of a world player during that time. That's why America came into being, but China wasn't a world player at that time. They are now. And so each of them has a very distinct sphere of influence, which all total equals up to something like 70% of the world's population.
And each capital has an intimate knowledge of their scar
Yes,
tissue and an
yes,
intimate knowledge
yes,
of what they're up against. And
yes.
that,
And what
so
we're up against.
and
Yeah,
what we're up against. So
yeah.
the arc whispers inside the NSS, they are real because you can't tell me that all of these events, Venezuela, Iran, these other things happen without coordination with
Oh,
DC, Beijing,
absolutely.
and Moscow. They couldn't
What did
possibly.
Trump just say about Xi, right? He's going to
Yeah,
go visit
right,
Xi and Xi's going to come visit him. And,
right, right.
you know,
But that's good news because what that
yes,
tells me
yeah,
is that the Hu Jintao faction, through the loss of Zhang Yuxia, that's settling in a very nice way. That's
yes,
actually going in a
yes,
direction that we would like to see.
yes.
It, it
I
So,
also
agree.
it also
mhm.
suggests to me, or I make it mean, that the war will be over before that visit happens.
Yes, in Iran, yes,
Yeah.
most likely. And to be quite frank, it's not even really a war. We don't have really forces on force. It's kind of like a special military operation,
Like
not
just
to use a term,
We should
right?
use that term.
destroying
We
It's the
should use
special
that term.
military operation.
Yeah, we've got one of our own. I've got a
That's
I
really
nesting
more
one
what
now.
it is.
I
It
It's
did
not
is.
ask
a
I did ask
yeah,
Grok about the different
yeah,
rates of strikes a few days
yeah.
ago between the US and Israel. And what Grok said is that from the record, publicly available information, the US is targeting military assets in
Yes.
Iran mostly.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean there aren't mishaps and mistakes. And Israel's the one doing all the decapitation strikes and the
Go
South
figure.
Pass gas field,
Yeah.
plus other
Go
places.
figure.
And then
They're very good at decapitating.
one of the things that I wonder about is could Trump have set up this? I'm going to use a bar fight analogy to set up this fight so that the other person gets attacked. Because with the American bases being attacked, well, he doesn't have to withdraw troops anymore. There's just nowhere for them to go. So they can't come back in. And then with Israel being struck again and again and again and again, Israel's getting slapped down.
Yes.
Well, you're going to take the
So,
balance out of the equation for the city of London is what's about to happen.
well, you
And
have to. Yeah, let's go ahead,
What
Blaine.
I
Go
mean
on,
by
Blaine.
that is
Yeah.
a lot of people are freaking out about boots on the ground. We're going to have troops in harm's way. They're going to be slaughtered in Iran. It's like, well, hold up. If the president's really negotiating not with the mullahs, but with what he's identified with assets on the ground as the next free Iranian government that's going to have self-determination,
Hasn't taken
and
out the president of Iran, have we? Or
that
any
that
government
that
official.
that's right. That's right. And so the 15 points are pretty clear, and there's reporting they got no back's ass on that. And then, but the thing I'd key in on here is when the president said, and they gave us a present and it's worth a lot of money, and we got it today. And what I think
Bless
that
you.
that present is the United States is going to be granted control of the Straits of Hormuz. And where I think that goes is once the country is inert and the mullahs have died out and the IRGC generals got nowhere to go but pledge their new allegiance to the new government,
Or
they're
did
going to
I?
welcome the United States in with open arms. They're going to ask us to help them with stabilization operations. They're going to ask us to run the straits. And so you've got the 82nd Airborne there. It's not to say that they're going into combat operations or insurgency operations. It's sit here, hold your gun, hold your ground, collect the new toll. The toll is going to the United States
Yes.
to pay for the
Yeah.
liberation of Iran. And that
Yeah.
and here goes the market. Now, I want you to think about
Blaine,
that
Blaine.
strategically. Hold on, hold on, hold on. I
Okay.
want you to think about that strategically in Tel Aviv and in London, because that's not going to be welcome news at all.
No, okay. The gift I understand, and I recorded a video with Susan Kokinder and Mike Steger from Promethean
Mhm.
Action, was actually 10 oil tankers that were Pakistani flagged.
Mhm.
That's what I've heard. So
Yeah.
now, could it be the
I've just got
control
a
of
different
this?
take on it. I'm
Right.
just telling.
I
Yeah.
mean, it could be the Straits of Hormuz as well. The 10 oil tankers is just a little hors d'oeuvre.
That's a little tip. It's a little pat on
Well,
the
it
ass.
didn't, like with the Venezuelan oil that, was sold to us ostensibly, that's not
Yeah.
actually what happened. Everybody was like, oh, we took their oil. That's not actually what happened. We have the right to refine their oil, and all proceeds of that, of the sale of that, will go back to Venezuela to assist the people in restructuring the country. I guarantee you that same thing's going to happen
Um,
there in Iran, where
yeah.
we're given the right to process. Us or one of our partners in the region
Yeah.
are going to be given the rights to process certain amounts of oil. That
Yeah.
funding will go into some form of a sovereign wealth fund that will be used to help reconstruct and rebuild Iran.
Yeah.
We're
If
playing a
that wasn't
different
the
game.
case,
Yeah, go
if
ahead.
if you were wrong, if that wasn't the case, China would not be on the sidelines.
Correct.
There'd be no way that
Absolute.
that would you'd see the
Correct.
Chinese
Same with
Navy all
Russia.
over the damn straits. Same with
Yep,
Russia.
same with Russia. So we are playing by American English rules, not City of London English rules. City of London English rules is we build up local infrastructure only to extract.
Yeah.
American English rules are we build up locally so that we don't have to deal with your ass here.
Right.
You all stay happy fuckers over there. You stay the fuck away from us.
Right.
But that's
And
consistent with the
by the way,
American
Lloyd's
system
of
for the
London's going
auxiliary.
out of business. No, we're healthy. Look at our balance sheet.
Well,
No, you're
that's
going
what I
out of
said in
business.
some other conversation. You can't offer insurance
That's right.
for naval, for maritime trade if you don't have a
Right.
fucking navy.
Right. That's right.
We're
That's
the only
it.
ones with a
They've been
navy.
using our Navy, and we've been
They've
letting
been
them
using our
get
navy.
away
That's
with it.
exactly right. So
So we
now
need to
it's you
cut their
don't get.
policy.
That's it. You don't get to use Americans as bully boys anymore.
Yeah.
You don't get to use us as bully boys anymore. We're done with it.
Bloody hell. Okay, moving on. And I do think, like, I think one of the mistakes that people make, and I'm referring to my friends and family, like the sort of the left wing, the anti-American hegemon left wing that may not necessarily be up to date with the role of the City of London, that they regard Trump just like any other warmongering president, that he's just like Bush, he's just like Obama, going around killing Muslims. And I think that's a mistake because he doesn't do kinetic action the way Obama did or the way Bush did, the Bushes did. And just like what he did with Venezuela was a complete surprise. Complete surprise.
So
Like, and I think what he's going to do with Iran is something that's going to surprise people and isn't going to end up as a quagmire like Vietnam or Afghanistan or Iraq. It's
Right.
just not because it's just not his
if
style.
if he's backed enough by the actual no shit war fighters and intelligence guys.
We
If
got to
he
win.
knows, back to Kent, if he
Hmm.
knows that he has enough of the no shit most dangerous people behind him, he can do things differently with even with all of the pressures around him to do some quagmire, etc. Even with the threat of duress to the Americans. Why?
Right.
Because if he's doing the right things, we will be behind him, whatever they throw at us.
Right. That's
Right.
right.
And he needs to know that. No
Especially the
leader,
graybeards.
correct. And then no
Yep.
leader in a long time in the United Kingdom or here has known that
Okay.
because they've had so much, So again, I think Joe Kent's message was way different and his intent was way different than what people think. I believe it was a selection mechanism
Hmm.
and it was a signaling.
Yeah.
We are behind you, Mr. Trump and team, but only under these stipulations. We will
Yeah.
not back you for these things.
Right.
Right.
And you might have some subset of us, right? Like some guys I know, you'll have some subset of us, but that's not enough.
Hmm.
That's not enough.
Which actually reinforces his position to do something different
Correct.
and not get stuck in a
Correct.
quagmire. And
Correct.
then the next thing, and it's kind of simmering quietly in the shadows of what's happening in Iran, is Cuba
Yeah,
and the
that's too
blockade of
easy.
Cuba.
Yeah, it's too easy.
But
Cuba will come
what is
over.
the
Yeah.
significance of Cuba? You just leave
Well,
Cuba
you just
alone.
remove the burr from the hound's heels, and the hound can stop braying and stop biting everything around it. Right? Cuba
Hmm.
is, unfortunately, a lot of these places in the world that are hotspots that we have to deal with were indirectly or directly created by us in the first place.
That's right.
And
Yep.
Cuba is our problem. We created Cuba.
Hmm.
We forced Cuba into the Soviets' hands. We did that. We did
Okay,
that,
explain
if you
how,
want.
Ian,
Well, we
what happened?
exploited the hell out of Cuba. We exploited the plantations, the casinos and every. We exploited the hell. Reed Smedley Butler's War
Yep.
is a Racket.
War is a
We
racket.
created the problem in Cuba that led to Castro's and led to all of that, and then we doubled down on it. We could have gone in there with Castro and the others, if we'd woken up and realized our mistake, but not realized that that was a, city of London, that was an intelligence operation from the beginning.
Castro.
We could have gone in with Castro, or yes, Castro initially. We could have gone in after, well, and the conditions on I can't remember the president's name before,
Right.
um, but all of the conditions in Cuba were created by us that
Right.
led to Castro, and Castro was backed and supported by another faction of us. We could have gone in there at any time and negotiated even with Castro and really had a fundamentally different future for Cuba.
Hmm.
It's not too late to do that. And it's interesting that our Secretary of State is Cuban.
Yeah,
It's very interesting.
it
It's
is.
also very interesting if you know any of the Cuban community in Miami and a couple of the other communities elsewhere, the younger generations don't have the same vitriolic, we have to go and destroy Castro and his people kind of mindset. They're more of the mind, the younger generations, the Cubans are more of, let's fix this.
Hmm.
Let's figure out how to heal this problem and get rid of, a dictatorial, an unhealthy dictatorial system. Let's let let's figure out how Cuba can thrive. The older generation, the silent and the boomer generation, and some of the older Xers are vitriolic. Just we got to go burn Cuba down. We got to go burn this regime out. But the younger generation Cubans aren't like that. They want the problem to go away. They want this Cuban problem to go away. Well, when you have a broader Cuban community, which many of them are very wealthy, very connected, very political, very, capable and astute, when you have a younger generation that's like, let's actually use diplomacy. Let's actually use economics instead of the intelligence community and special operations and the armies and the Navy. you have all kinds of other options open to you. And
Okay.
that actually, by the way, that's also what led to Venezuela and Iran. It's not that, the president and his team are all, they're all, his closer level people are all boomers and silent generation, but the people around him are millennials and Xers, the ones that are on the execution side of things. And our generations, particularly after the G water, like, yeah, let's go smash stuff. Let's go break stuff. Let's go fight something forever. It doesn't work. We watched our parents in Vietnam. We went and did it ourselves. Some of us went and did it twice
Okay.
over a 30-year period. It opens up a lot of, opportunities for, those who are actually in leadership to choose other paths.
And we shall follow those paths that get chosen and they get walked upon and what happens. And I want to thank you both. Thank you both, Ian. Thank you, Blaine. It's an absolutely fascinating conversation. Not quite explosive, but still prized my head open.
What's
So
Friday?
Guarded
Friday.
optimism.
You can rest. You can rest and recover through the weekend, my friend.
thank you, thank you. I so enjoy and appreciate having these conversations with you. And for those of you that are watching this, if you enjoyed and appreciate this, let us know. And if you didn't, well, lie about it and say you enjoyed and appreciated it anyway. This is Rich and Blaine and Ian signing out. All the best. Bye bye.
Thanks much.